Right.
Criminals will be made to attend their sentencing hearings by force if necessary, or face the prospect of more time in prison under new laws for England and Wales proposed by the Ministry of Justice. There have been a number of high-profile cases where offenders refused to appear. The most famous probably recently is the Lucy Letby case earlier this month. In my opinion, comes from Thomas Leonard Ross KC, who's a defence lawyer and joins us now. Hi there.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, then, just tell us what your opinion is then on the proposed laws by the Ministry of Justice.
Well, I don't have any real objection to the notion that an additional sentence should be imposed in relation to a prisoner who refuses to come to court. Although I did think that they already had powers in terms of the Contempt of Court Act to order the sentence of the type that's under discussion. And of course, in relation to people who are being sentenced effectively to terms which will never result in them being released, it's no punishment at all.
Yeah, well, that is one of the arguments, isn't it? If you're going to get, 2 years added on at the end of your sentencing, but you're already being sentenced to a life imprisonment, what difference does that actually make? And just tell us, in your experience, why do criminals refuse to attend their sentencing hearings? They attend everything else, so why is it the sentencing hearing element of it that they seem to have such a big issue with?
Well, the first aspect is they've got absolutely nothing to lose. They can't make it any better or any worse by attending or not attending. So I suppose that's really the principal consideration, which means that actually it's a very, very tiny group of prisoners who will behave in that way, because most prisoners obviously want to influence the judge in a positive way rather than cause a disruption in court. But I suppose the other thing is they're ashamed of the things that they did. They know that it will be difficult to face the victims or the family of the victims. And it's an easy option because, as I said, they're not making it any worse by not attending.
It did seem like there was an awful lot of people that thought that Lucy Letby, if we use her as an example, should have been forced to sit there and to hear what the families of the victims had to say about what she had done. Do you think that there is any element that it would make the families of victims or the victims themselves feel better to sit there and to know that the person that committed these crimes is having to hear exactly what impact they've had?
Well, it might well make them feel better, but it's simply impossible to carry it out. I mean, there are various members of staff who bring a criminal case about, and the proposal seems to be that the worst paid members of staff, namely the people who work for the security firm, have to start rolling about with violent criminals. I mean, it's sheer madness. It could never possibly survive any sort of health and safety assessment that a private company will tell an employee, there's a guy down there who's already serving a life sentence. He's murdered 4 people, and I want you to get in and wrestle with him and drag him into the dog. It's a crazy idea.
Do you think it would work better then if there was an alternative situation? I think that this is also being put forward, that instead of forcing them to appear in the dock, which, as you say, could be quite physical and could be quite difficult to watch for those that are there, that perhaps they are made then to watch via video link somewhere else, so that they're not physically in the room, but they are still having to deal with the consequences of their actions?
I don't know how you make somebody watch, or you make somebody listen. I think probably the better course is to sit down with the families, who are generally very responsible, very respectful to the court, very well behaved, and explain to them that although they want this, they can't have it because in practical terms it's impossible to deliver it. That's the sort of grown-up conversation that politicians should be having with victims. I mean, they're not children. These people are routinely engaged with the criminal justice system. They're given bad news about cases. This is just another example where they should be told, we would love to have this, but we can't send somebody who's on £12 an hour down to drag a murderer up the stairs into court.
How many Scottish criminals have you known in your career to refuse to attend their sentencing? How common is it?
None. I've never known any in 40 years. Never known any. And, because it makes perfect sense for them to attend. They don't need to be persuaded that winding up the judge on the morning of sentence is a bad idea. They've worked that out themselves.
How do you think then, if this indeed goes through, it's made law, how do you think it will change? Or do you not think it will change anything?
It won't change anything, it won't change anything. Already the judges have the power to impose a sentence for contempt of court. There's no way that a proposal that members of staff have to drag violent criminals into court could ever survive any health and safety assessment in terms of a risk assessment. I mean, can you imagine it? That the private firm are prosecuted and they have to come in and explain why they thought it was safe to send a 24-year-old member of staff down to fight with a violent criminal.
I guess the final thought would be is that some people would think that this prioritises the criminal's well-being or what the criminal wants, or the person that is charged with whatever crime, over the victim or the families of the victims. It might seem upsetting that at this final moment where they're looking for closure, that actually they'll never be able to look that person in the eyes and think that they've got that closure.
No, I agree. I mean, it must be really, really terrible. Fortunately, I've never been in that situation, and everybody has sympathy for the people who are in the situation. But as I say, they're adults. I'm sure they can explain the practical difficulties of dragging violent people from a place where they want to be into a place where they don't want to be.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's Thomas Leonard Ross, KC, who's a defence lawyer with his In My Opinion. What do you think? Do you agree with what Thomas was saying there? Do you disagree? Criminals will be made to attend their sentencing hearings by force if necessary or face the prospect of more time in prison under new laws for England and Wales proposed by the Ministry of Justice. Do you think that is right? Get in touch with us, 85058 on the text, at BBC 5 Live, or you can send us a voice note, 08085 909 693. It is 7:47.